Welcome to this video, which is all about cold calling in the recruitment industry. For those of you who are new here, my name's Kimber. I've been a recruiter for over 17 years now, and over the years I have built 4 cold desks completely from scratch, and I have scaled my business to over 7 figures a year. I now specialize in mentoring recruiters and teaching them how they can generate leads, increase their revenue, as well as automate their time. And in this video, I am going to be talking to you about cold calling, whether or not I think it still works, and also a framework to make a cold call. I first want to start off by saying, because I post a lot about personal branding and marketing and creating visibility, now I'm technically not against cold calling, but it depends on what your definition is, because the way that I class like cold calling is die hard, cold call, smile and dial. You've got a database, you pick up the phone and you call random people. I started in the recruitment industry in 2008, which that was literally the method that we were taught. So I'd make hundreds of cold calls every single day. Based on the law of averages, you'd end up converting some of them. But you have to remember, back in those days, there was no social media, no social selling, no automation, no email funnels. It just didn't exist. Do I think that style of cold calling still works in 2025? Absolutely not. The other thing is as well is you need to exchange your time for a lead, because if you work 40 hours a week, which I know most recruiters probably work more than that, but let's say a full-time role is 40 hours a week, you're bound by time. There's only physically so many people you can call and have a conversation with. So even if you're successful at first and you have some luck with it, which you will, like it does still work in some ways, you'll hit a point and you can't push through. Unless you want to double your hours, you can't double your revenue, because remember, there's a strategy which is bound by time. The way I like to do my cold calling is actually what I call warm calling. Now, warm calling is a way to call leads that already know who you are, what you do, and they're most likely to convert. So I like to automate my marketing on the front end, so create visibility through my LinkedIn personal brand. Anyone who shows interest, who is my exact target audience, I follow up with them with a warm call, so still technically it's a cold call. The people are usually so much more responsive, because if they've already liked and engaged and commented, or we're having a chit chat in the inbox and I make a call, you don't get met with the who, what, where, and people trying to get you off the phone like you would on a hard cold call. Because at the end of the day, people on a warm call are usually like surprised that you've called, in a good way, because actually you're disrupting their reflex to try and get you off the phone. So usually you're met with, oh yeah, Jess. It's like a surprise, and best place you can be if you're making a call, because if they're surprised, it's actually disrupted them. So they'll keep listening to you and they'll be curious to know why you've chosen to call them. So I play on that, I leverage that. That's my spiel on whether or not I think cold calling works. I think warm calling is amazing, but I think you need to find a way to market yourself on the front end to create mass scale visibility where your reach is not bound by time. Reach is actually bound on the quality of your posts. So you can reach thousands of people with every single post, and you do it once, which I love. And then you take a certain portion of these people who are most likely to convert, liking, engaging, speaking to you, and you warm call, and this becomes your active BD list. So that's a really high level of what I teach. I teach a ton more strategy to do with how to identify high quality leads, which I have inside my Be Rare Academy, which is my online recruitment academy. I'll leave a link in the description for you to check it out. If you come through YouTube, you actually get a 7-day free trial, so use the link below. That's what I recommend. Now, let's get into the actual framework itself for a cold call, exactly how I do it. Well, warm call technically. So as you know, I call leads that are most likely to want to speak to me. So that's a green tick. I'm already off to a good start. And then what I do is introduce myself, and I use the fact that they've liked or engaged with what I do as a trigger point. So what I mean by that is introduce yourself and then have a reason to call, which is a trigger. In my online academy, I actually teach 21 triggers, 21 reasons for you to call. So there's so many different options that you can actually pick. One of them is if they've posted a job ad, if they've just liked a piece of content, if you've got a hard to find skill set, if they've just received funding and that's public knowledge. So a ton of different reasons. For the purpose of this, if we're talking about marketing on the front end and then warm calling, we're going to use the trigger that they liked or engaged with a piece of my content. So I would say, hi Joe, it's Jess calling from Rare. How are you? Usually it takes them a second to click, and then Joe, because he knows who I am, would be like, oh yeah, thank you, I'm good. How are you? And at this point, I set the intention and the reason for the call. So I'll say, Joe, thank you so much for liking my post about AI a couple of days ago. Hey, look, off the back of that, I actually checked out your profile and I realize XYZ. Now, what you're realizing is something you've seen on their profile. So this is where you have to customize it. It could be, if they post content, you could say, you posted XYZ, blah, 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 ask a question, get a conversation started. But if they don't post content, which is most people, at this point, I would just use their job as a trigger. So let's pretend Joe was my perfect target audience and he's a solo business owner. So my perfect target audience is solo agency owners. So I would say, awesome. Well, you liking that post actually prompted me to click into your profile. And I noticed that you're a solo business owner. Is that correct? The is that correct is just a way to get a yes out of them. The conversation's going. So is that correct? You already know it's correct, but Joe says yes. Awesome. Now, Joe, the reason for my call is I can't assume that you would even need any help with recruitment at the moment. However, I help businesses just like yours and drop in what I call a well statement, which is a one-liner that buys you credibility. An example could be, and I've actually helped 50 businesses just like yours in the last couple of years, like really scale their team. Can't assume you'd even need any help, but have you got a couple of minutes and I'll ask you a few questions and see whether there's any potential that we could partner at some point in the future. Now, what I've done there is two things. I've done, number one, a permission-based opener. I've asked for permission to move to the next stage, which you should always do because it makes them feel in control. But the second thing that I've also done is I've used what I call a low-touch ask, where I've said at some point in the future. That alone is going to increase your conversion rate when we're talking about call success, because some point in the future is valid. If you say, are you hiring right now? You're actually opening yourself up for a no, because the chances of your cold random audience, people that you're calling off the back of a like on LinkedIn, the chances of them hiring right now is actually quite slim, unless of course it's a huge company that's always hiring. Assuming it's not, most people at that point would say no. By me saying at some point in the future, Joe would be like, yeah, I'm open to a conversation about that at some point. And then this is where I go into my discovery phase. Now, the way I like to think about my discovery questioning is I like to think about it in terms of past, present, and future. Now let's think about a movie. One of my favorite movies ever is the Rocky series. But think about Rocky. His story is him in the past, okay? So his hardships, his challenges, he's in a really stressful, horrible, nasty situation. And then the movie, you watch him in the present, you watch him overcoming obstacles, you watch him fighting, getting 1% better, practicing, he's got grit, he's got determination, and he keeps going. He's the underdog, but he keeps going, and you get that emotional buy-in to his story. And then the end result is the end of the movie. It's the outcome. It's him in all his glory. He's achieved the success, right? And this is called the hero's journey in marketing. The reason I'm saying this to you right now is actually because a cold call is a similar framework to this. Think about it in the way where it's like the past situation, the hardships, then current, what's the current situation? And then the future, what's the best version of themselves? What's that pinnacle moment for them, okay? So try and remember that movie analogy when you're on your cold calls. It's going to make it so much easier. Going back to the actual framework of why that's relevant is you want to be going back to the past. So what have you tried in the past? Then you want to go into what are you currently doing or current needs? What does that look like? And then future. What would you do if you had to go outside of that? If you could wave a magic wand and get to the next stage, what would you want? Because this is everything that you sell into. What you're actually uncovering is the pain points by past situations, and then future wants is the desires. So we all know in sales, you need to have a pain point and then how you solve the pain point. So that's what you're setting yourself up for here. Let's talk about this in recruitment terms. Past questioning, I would actually use what I call a transition at this stage, because you don't want to be like, yep, great, they say yes to asking a few questions, and then you're like, so in the past, what have you done? So I use a transition there where I'll say, before I find out about what you're currently doing, whether you've got any current needs, just keen to find out, in the past, have you used recruiters? Are you the decision maker? Have you hired before? What roles have you hired in the past? What has that looked like for you? What's gone well for you in the past? What hasn't gone so well for you in the past? You've unpacked some information. Awesome. You know what they liked, what they didn't like. Are there any particular needs that you're struggling to fill? Is there anything that you're not quite finding through your own channels? Is there anyone leaving soon? Is there anything coming up in the present that I should be aware of right now? What are you doing about that? What's your current goals? What's the business goals? What does that look like to you, Mr. Joe? Awesome, unpack that. And then what I would do at this point is I would use what I call a clarification statement, where I clarify what they say and then I go into future questioning. So what that would look like is, just to confirm I heard correctly, what you've said is, in the past you hire for these type of roles, you usually use job adverts. It's gone fairly well, particularly for the junior roles, but not so much for the senior roles. Is that correct? Yes, perfect. You've got another yes. That's a green tick. Awesome. And just confirming, at the minute, you're not actively hiring, but there is a potential for a marketing manager role. You think probably in the next 3 to 6 months. Is that correct? Yep. Okay, awesome. So Joe, in the future, when you do hire this role, what will you be looking for? What skill set? What channels will you use? Have you got any current providers? You're actually weeding out here any of the objections as well. You're basically saying to them, what channels will you use? Do you have an internal team? Do you have a recruitment provider? What do you want? What's the next step for you? And you can then go into questions as to say, if I could give you the perfect A-grade candidate, what would be your top 3 non-negotiables? And I call this impact questioning, because you're impactfully asking questions to make the situation real. Now, just to reflect, they've talked you through the past, present, and then future. What you're selling into is the future need, because you want to sell the future solution to them. Once you've gone through that questioning, what you'll then do is go into what I call the cost of inaction questioning. So basically, if they don't take action right now, ideally, what will happen? So in this example, Joe said that he's not actually actively hiring, but he is in 3 months. Now, if you're really good at questioning and you figured out at some point in the process that job ads usually take 3 months to turn around, but he's happy with them, but he wants his marketing manager to start in 3 months, you would be having the conversation as to say, well, Joe, it looks like it takes 3 months on average to actually see success with your job adverts. And obviously you're hiring this role in the next 3 months. Have you started that process now? No. Oh, right. Okay. Interesting. And what I would be doing then is saying, what would happen if you didn't take action now? What would happen if you didn't have this person? How would that negatively impact the business? Now, think about their intrinsic motivations as well. People don't care for recruitment services. They care that by having somebody in that role, they're going to get time back, money back, be able to scale their team, more freedom, hit their KPIs, keep their clients happy. Like, that's what they actually care about. You always want to bring these cost of inaction questions back to that point. You want to be saying, well, what happens if you can't scale the team? What happens if your clients don't get contacted for another 3 months? What happens if you do keep losing 10% revenue month on month, Joe? Can you see how now you've made it really real to Joe? And just by doing that as a framework, they start to then say, well, I know what I want in the future, and if I don't take action now, I'm going to be in trouble. This is where you could trial close and say, Joe, awesome. So do you think it would make sense, love that one, make sense to do the next step? Because they've just told you they need to get started. Would it make sense for us to meet, to sign terms, to get started working on this role, whatever it might be? You really need somebody in this role. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to spend time with your kids, your clients are going to be unhappy, and your investors will be too. So would it make sense for us to, next step of the sales cycle, work together? That actually would potentially make sense for me to meet you. Awesome. Then what I do is go into the partnership side of things. So I say, if you were to sign off on an agency partnership, what do you look for? Have you done that in the past? This is really your finding out their experience with agencies, because you can almost guarantee and preempt certain objections. If they haven't worked with an agency before, they're going to go, whoa, that's expensive. If they have, they've probably had a bad experience somewhere down the track. So you can almost guess, make an educated guess, and you can also know how much you need to sell about what we do. Because if someone's never worked with an agency before, you need to literally spoon feed them what they're going to get as a result of working with you and paying you 20%. If they have worked with 20 agencies in the past, they already know, but you may be trying to set their expectations around why working with one agency is better than 20 agencies. What do they want? What do you sell into as well? Perfect. Awesome. You know what you're selling into because they've given you the answers. Great. This is when I would close the next stage. Now, something I actually haven't mentioned yet is a process that I follow throughout any conversation, where I don't just wait till the end to like pitch my services. I actually do what I call micro pitches all throughout. So anything that they say to me, I will say, for example, yeah, look, I've been around for 17 years and I've seen this many times. I'm like normalizing, but I'm sharing a little mini pitch about myself to showcase I know and understand what you're talking about and I've experienced it. So at different points, I might also say things like, absolutely, look, I agree, job ads, they really aren't as effective as they used to be. In fact, it's taken me 5 years to build my database to 10,000. And in all honesty, I don't know what I would do without that. I don't even think I'd be able to recruit if I just relied on job ads. Can you see now that I'm selling how what I do is something that they can't get? So have a ton of different micro pitches. And by the way, this is also something which I teach inside all of my programs. So if you are interested in knowing how that works, click the link in the description. You can actually submit an application to work with me as well. Dropping all these micro pitches in. Then once I've got all the answers to my questions, I would actually ask for permission again. I'd use another permission-based opener and I would say, awesome, do you mind if I share with you a little bit about what I do? Now, because I've already sold myself throughout the conversation, these little micro pitches at a time, usually this person, assuming they're still speaking to me, would be like, yeah, because I've just spent 5, 10, 20 minutes on the phone to you. So of course. So you get your yes, and then you pitch what you can offer them, which is aligned to solving the problems of their past situation. And then when it comes to their present and future situation, how your services align to that. And as a partner, how you can give them what they want as well. At that point, do my pitch, do my spiel, and then I close. There's so many different ways you can close. I really like doing either A/B closing or I like doing an assumptive close. So that's where I'd say, awesome. Look, Joe, do you think that could help when you are hiring? Yep, awesome. Well, what time is best for you to meet next week? I'm just assuming we're meeting. Or the A/B close is, awesome. What time are you free to meet next week? Tuesday at 2 o'clock or Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Awesome. Great. Lock it in, get commitment. You have just closed a cold call to the next stage. And by the way, the next stage of a cold call is not always a meeting. Sometimes it's a follow-up call. Sometimes it's getting terms of business signed now. So in 6 months' time, they don't have to go to market. So it's really about just thinking, what is the next stage of the sales cycle with this person that I'm speaking to and how do I get that commitment today? Lock it in, get commitment. You have just closed a cold call to the next stage. And by the way, the next stage of a cold call is not always a meeting. Sometimes it's a follow-up call. Sometimes it's getting terms of business signed now. So in 6 months' time, they don't have to go to market. So it's really about just thinking, what is the next stage of the sales cycle with this person that I'm speaking to and how do I get that commitment today? So I really hope this helped. As mentioned, this is something I teach in depth. In fact, the cold calling framework usually takes me a good couple of hours to teach. This is a super high level of the steps. My full programs have an example of every single question that you should ask at every single stage. So I will leave a link in the description if you do want to check out what I can offer. If you did like this video, please do give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe. I do post YouTube videos weekly, so be sure to check those out. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.